What up, it's your boy Dragon, and this is a PVM discussion video. Today's topic is the Dracolich problem. In this video, I wanted to talk about the top end of range equipment. I wanted to cover what I see as the main problem with it, and then there will be some follow-up problems that arise when we start with this one, and kind of talk about some of the other things that pertain to it. So, this is the first in a 4-part video series, so we're going to quickly run down the other videos, and then we're going to get into the main topic. So of course, the first part is the Dracolich problem. So I'm going to talk about the top end of range equipment here and why Dracolich and Elite Dracolich are a problem, and why actually Tier 75 Undead Dragonhide is also a bit of an issue. The next video is going to be part 2, which is range tiers. So we're going to talk about range tiers top to bottom, why I think they're out of place, and what some adjustments could do to make them make sense and feel a little bit better for anybody who's trying to acquire any kind of range gear. And then part 3 is the raids refresh. So obviously Tempest and Acto Tempest are going to be part of range equipment, and I will be talking about that specifically. So I wanted to give that its own part because I think raids is a cool piece of content that is pretty much left out now. It's not as relevant as it was, but it seems like it's an old piece of content. With a 10-man raid, it seems pretty unlikely. So there's some changes that could, I would say, easily be made, but some changes that would, I think, make raids feel better and more rewarding. And then of course, since we're talking about tank armor at the top end here, part 4 is going to be tank armor, the mechanics of tank armor in general, and of course the thematics surrounding it. So this is the 4-part series, and this is part 1. So the first thing I obviously want to talk about is the 3 gear sets. So we already have a Tier 75 tank gear, Tier 90 power gear, and Tier 92 power gear. So the dinosaur hide is the exact same as the Undead Dragonhide. However, the Undead Dragonhide has the HP boost, which is kind of BS that for no reason at all it just gets extra HP. But then you have your Tier 90 and Tier 92 gear sets, which are exactly the same. So you have to ask yourself, why? Why is this even in the game? Why is this the direction they decided to go? So I don't really understand it. So I have some proposed changes that I want to make to Sirenic and Elite Sirenic. So I want to go through these and kind of get everybody's thoughts on them. So, before we get into the changes, I want to address what I would call the problems. So, we're going to talk about the first problem, which is the redundancy. Obvious problem because everything already has an existing set. So, Tier 75 is tank gear, Tier 90 power armor, Tier 92 power armor. So, all these things already exist, and having different set effects just makes them too niche, which is the second problem. These sets are too niche. Having to have a full set of gear for each level seems like probably not a good idea. I don't know what Jagex was thinking with this, but again, it's not something that can't be salvaged by some small equipment adjustments. Now, obviously, I think it's too much to ask to perk 2 gear sets that are essentially the same thing. So when you're spending more money on the perks themselves than the actual gear sets, it's kind of annoying. So I don't think I like that, and I'm sure a lot of people don't as well. The next one is stagnation. Players already have this similar gear, so they would have no desire to acquire the equivalent gear. This is the exact case for myself, and that is why I don't think the gear set should be Tier 92 at all. It doesn't make sense to me to add a equivalent set because as soon as it was released, I had no desire to get this set, even though it had a cool set effect. Now, that is the last part. Now, I don't really mind the full set effects, but I think a lot of players might kind of be against it because then they can't use the Death Touch Brace, Poison Gloves, Fleeting Boots. So there's different things that you can't use when you need a full set. So that's a topic for another video, but I think set effects might be an issue for some other players. Alright, now we're going to talk about the proposal that I have for the Dracolich fix, to kind of fix the equipment and make it more desirable and make it better overall. So we already have Elite Sirenic and Sirenic in the game. These are at Tier 92 and Tier 90 power armor gear respectively, so this gear set pretty much stays where it's at. No problem, not a big deal. So obviously I'm sure you already know where I'm going with this, but Elite Dracolich would move up to a Tier 95 set. I think this makes sense. There's also 5 pieces required, but it does take Elite Sirenic as one of the components, and the other being Dracolich. Now, surprisingly enough, me personally, I would move Dracolich down to the Tier 90 tank slot. So this makes sense for a couple of reasons. First, it would be the only Tier 90 tank gear after the proposed changes here, but it's a Tier 90 tank gear, and Tier 95 power armor actually has the same defensive bonus as Tier 90 tank armor. So the stats don't change on the defensive bonus when you upgrade it using Elite Sirenic components, and especially for Iron Man this makes sense because then when you get both sets, you can just essentially combine them to get the best in slot power armor. Now, that takes away your Tier 90 tank armor, however that's not best in slot, so I think most Iron Man would be okay with doing something like that. Now, of course, I'm sure you've already guessed as well, tier 92 tank armor would be Tempest, followed up with Acto Tempest as your tier 95 tank armor. So, I'm going to talk about a couple more changes that I would make with those gear sets specifically, because if they move up in power, I don't know if the defensive effect even makes them valuable, because tank gear really isn't that valuable. So, I'll talk about that change that I want to make to those gear sets in another video, but overall, I think this is a better option for the top 3 sets of gear on each side of power and tank armor. It balances all of them out, and it makes pretty good thematic sense if you think about it with what I've explained today. So again, this is the first in a 4-part series, and I hope you like the content, because I probably care more about balancing and the game itself rather than actually playing the game sometimes. So this is just a prime example, and I hope to have a lot more videos like this in the future. So if you like this one, subscribe, and look out for part 2, because that'll be coming soon. Thanks, and I'll see you.